like the permanent recording. Yeah, you're good.
Is this thing on?
Hi, I'm Indy and this is another Great War special episode about the firearms of the First World War. Now, before anybody says anything, I have the hiccups, and I've had them since 11 o'clock last night. So we get hiccups today. This is our social media guru, Flo. He's going to be my sidekick today. Flo says hi. Now, we've done specials already about the French guns, French handguns and rifles, German handguns and rifles, and today is going to be the Austro-Hungarian firearms of the First World War. And to present all of this fabulous, fantastic, incredibly interesting material to you is none other than the living legend himself from C&Rsenal, an awesome channel and an awesome guy, Othais.
Hey, how's it going, Indy?
That was a good intro, right?
Yeah, that was a lot. I think you might have oversold me a little bit, but I'm proud to be here.
Well, I love doing these, you know that. So even with the hiccups, let's just jump right in. Say what you got, a little bit about what you got for us today, okay?
Okay, today we're doing Austria-Hungary. I've got a series of 3 rifles and, good Lord, 6 pistols. Oh, so we're going to get a good covering on this one. We'll get into it just as soon as you're ready. But for our live viewers right now, just to let you know, we've switched up formats a little bit. We are going to be recording with my regular DSLRs. That gives us sort of a smaller window on recording these segments. That's going to improve our edited show. So for those of you live, it's going to be more like a live studio audience this time. We're not going to put a lot of pizzazz on for you guys. We're going to be shuffling cameras. There's going to be some pauses. We may even have to wait for something to cool off. But we'd really like to get the sort of 1080p that we're getting on my videos over to the Great War videos. So be patient, live audience.
And we're going to have signs that say applause, and we're going to have signs that say, aw. And everybody, studio, reach under your seats. There's a special package for each and every one of you out there. Okay?
Do we have T-shirt cannons?
We have T-shirt cannons. We do have T-shirt cannons today. Stay tuned.
That's going to have the same range as the World War I train cannons, right? So that you can actually get to the audience.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So one other thing, just while I've got the live audience for a second, I don't have anybody watching the comments for me this time around, so if somebody can just grab a copy of them and email them to me, just a fan or something, that'd be great. I just like being able to review them and get back to people's questions later on. But yeah, other than that, I think we're ready to rock and roll when you guys are.
Okay, and now I told you before, this one is one I've really been looking forward to because you do hear stuff occasionally about the German weapons and the French weapons that we've covered, but I never hear anything about the Austro-Hungarian weapons, and so I think this is going to be a fantastic episode. So we're ready, Flo, yeah?
Yeah, we're completely ready.
All right, jump in.
Yeah, so Austria-Hungary, like the Austrian weapons, they're going to be kind of odd. They're almost alien compared to the rest of the world at that time because they just had a unique way of looking at things. I really appreciate getting into these guns, and I'm surprised that they're not more visible in popular culture considering how many were made. Some of these things, especially the long rifle we're going to get into, were very common on the battle, and they're going to be common all the way through World War II. So they're not secret guns. They're not rare guns. Some of them are, but not the mainline rifle. So I'm not sure where they fell out of popular culture, but let's try to bring them back just a little bit.
All right, that's very interesting.
Okay, so let me start off with the rifles. I'm going to go over to the Mannlicher 1888-90. Now, this was a sort of old rifle for World War I. This was the previous rifle for World War I. The reason it stuck around is because, as we know, attrition was severe and manufacturing couldn't keep up. And even Austria-Hungary, who had a huge standing army at the beginning of the war and a huge stockpile of weapons, even they started stripping through them so fast that they had to start dredging this kind of stuff up. Now, the 88-90 is a straight pull rifle, just like what we're going to see as the 95. However, it works differently. We'll get into that in just one second. I should cover just a bit of history. Ferdinand Mannlicher introduced this rifle. At the time, during the trials, he introduced 2 rifles, one using a rotating lock and one using what we'll see as a wedge lock. The wedge lock was simpler. They went with that. It was suited for black powder cartridges and 11mm. That's slower, lighter loaded. It doesn't beat up the rifle as much, but it leaves fouling everywhere. So they're a weaker action than what we're going to see later. Now, they come out with this in 1886, the big brother to this in 11mm. The French immediately released the Lebel, and we talked about how smokeless really changed the game. So the Austro-Hungarians have to go rushing to catch up. They quickly convert this to an 8mm small bore with compressed black powder. That's the Model 88. Then in 90, they come out with a semi-smokeless cartridge in 8mm. That's the 8890. So every time they have to rebarrel everything and reconfigure. As we zoom in, I'll get into the features of those changes. And for the live audience, there's going to be some pausing on this because we have to set up my cameras to record whenever I change and give them a chance to cool down. So the reason why there's these odd pauses is I have to kill one camera, turn on the other so that I can keep track of what's heating and cooling while I'm doing all this.
This generally should make the quality of the videos we upload later much better. And
Yes.
you can also probably hear that the sound is much better than in our first 2 episodes. So, you know, we're improving the technique on the fly, and I hope you guys appreciate it.
Yeah, you couldn't hear me hiccuping at all in those episodes, but now you can hear it all the time.
Cooling, recording, we're good. Yep, I've got monitors everywhere. So I had to pick up where I left off.
Yeah.
All right, looking up close, first things first, it is a straight pull. So I just pull the bolt to the rear. That's it. I don't have to rotate or flip or do anything else. As a shooter, this is great because I don't have to move my arm around a lot. I don't have to give up my elbow to show my position. I can stay flat along the ground. I can keep my eyes down the sights. My arm and the bolt handle aren't coming up into my line of vision. I can just focus on that front sight and I don't have to do anything else. It's terrifically simple from the shooter's perspective. All right, so the other thing, just to cover real quick, remember we were talking about those cartridge conversions. It's going to be hard to see on the live view, but on our recorded view, this actually has a clipped over sight because this is an 8890. They had to put a plate over the sights to adjust for the flatter shooting 90 cartridge when they adopted it. Now, the magazine is really the big thing on these guns. The 86 and then all the subsequent 88 and the 90s, they brought about end block loading. This is Mannlicher's big contribution to firearms. It's a huge deal because we have a 5-round packet that we load into the gun. It stays into the gun. And then when we've expended our last, or when we've chambered our last round, that clip's going to fall at the bottom. And sorry, these are live cartridges, so I'm not going to load it. That means we also have the problem with the Mannlicher system that we saw in the Berthier and the Gavard 88, which is that we have this hole in the bottom, which we have to account for because we're going to have mud and stuff trying to enter it. This is not a great system for the trenches because it's so prone to getting dirty. Anyway, this really isn't the top-of-line gun for Austria-Hungary at the time, but one last thing to show you is that wedge lock. So you can see that sort of wedge shape right there. What that's doing is it projects down into the receiver and keeps it from traveling rearward when we fire. If we have the action sort of cocked back, and I have to hold it with my hand, sorry. If we have it cocked back, you'll see it rest flat. And then if we let it forward, like we bolted forward, it locks it. And that's it. So, and again, recorded show will be a little tighter. This, this wedge only locks on the underside of the bolt, which means that there's some torque in there. It's not a big locking surface. It's fairly delicate by comparison to what we're going to see in a minute. This gun limits the Austro-Hungarians for a while because they want to keep it in service, so they keep downloading their ammo to make it not blow this gun up.
Right.
So they have a colder cartridge because of this gun for many years to come. All right, if we zoom out.
That's very interesting. It's cool.
It's very unusual compared to the other ones we've seen so far. And you said it's great for the shooter. Is there a but? Is it great for not great for someone else?
Well, you have to scale down the ammunition, but
well,
sorry, we're just talking amongst ourselves about this fascinating.
Oh, no, it's perfectly usable for the thing, but give me 1 second. Yeah, if you're the shooter, it's great. If you're the manufacturer, if you're the army that's trying to field this thing, you've got finer fitted parts. You've got a kind of a pain in the butt mechanism to deal with from an engineering standpoint because there's more fiddly moving bits in there than on a bolt action that you have to raise yourself. Also, on the bolt action, that rotating force is coming from the shooter. So you don't have to make the gun self-rotate. That means you don't have any weird camways and stuff in there to deal with. It's just, you just have some channels that turn and then it locks. In this, you have to come up with a camming mechanism somewhere in the gun that takes linear force and turns it into some sort of rotary force. And so you have to then maintain that system. So more metal, more time, more things prone to failure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just a side question. How long is that compared with, say, the Lebel? With some of the French or the German?
Compared to the Lebel, it's almost about the same length. This is another big boy 50-inch style rifle. This is going to be pretty standard through all the long rifles. Honestly, the whole series we go, you're going to see ranging from about 49 to 51.5. It seems like everybody stayed real tight to that length. But anyway, this would be the reserve arm. So these were issued in plenty big numbers. They made it to the front. You'd see them against the Italians a lot too. But it's not technically the standard service arm at that time. So let me set this aside. The gun we're missing is the 90 carbine. That was introduced specifically for cavalry and artillery, but it would later get expanded to other troops. There are a myriad of versions for both the 90 and 95 carbines. So I've given you guys a link to share with everybody where I've done a much better job of sort of describing every variation. It's just too much to go into on this show anyway.
Oh, okay.
Now, the 90 is going to...
You can find the link in the video description. It's like there's two links. One is about is with pictures, and the other one is about the evolution of the rifle, the quick and dirty guide. Yeah, just under the video.
Okay.
The 90 as a carbine is going to look almost exactly like the 95s that I'm going to show you in just a moment. Yeah. It has a different cocking piece, and the rear sight is more like the 8890. That's it. So you're not missing anything important because all the features are here. So let me zoom in and show you one little thing. I'm sorry, I send everybody scrambling when I zoom in and zoom out.
Well, how's the hiccup going?
It's still going strong. I can't believe it. It's been like, what, 21 hours, 20 hours now?
Maybe we should do a special interest story. And
tickle them until it stops.
Well, I once had them for 24 hours. These actually did take a break for an hour or so when I took a nap earlier, but as soon as I woke up, they came back. So,
Flo, just tickle him until it stops.
Pardon?
Tickle him until it stops, Flo.
It's tickle me till it stops, Flo.
Maybe that's then we have to put an age gate on the video or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of hiccuping until November the 11th, 2018, when we can do the final episode of the channel. The entire rest of the war, I'm going to be hiccuping in sympathy with the common man.
Definitely your thing.
All right, so this is a 95 bolt, but it's going to be nearly identical except for the cocking piece to a 90 bolt. So it gets across what I want to say. The 90 introduced an action where we rotate to lock. So this is unlocked, and then as we advance the bolt, it's going to twist and turn these locking lugs. And again, it'll be clear in the edited show. But these locking lugs turn and lock just like a bolt action that we're familiar with front locking lugs, manual bolt action, I should say. So, yeah, it's done by a helix-shaped cam on the inside of the bolt. And I know it's pretty backed out for the live show, but what we have is a twisting cut in the bolt. There's matching lugs inside this bolt body so that when we force this forward inside the gun, it's going to twist to lock the action. That's it.
Wow.
Now, the big thing about this is you couldn't really do it well with black powder because front locking lugs with black powder invited all sorts of fouling and extra debris from unburned powder. It also would have gotten a lot of gunk down in these grooves, which is why in 1884 the Austrians said no. But by the time we get around to 1890 and we have semi-smokeless and soon to be smokeless, they're saying yes, because there's no longer that problem of fouling. So if we zoom out,
yeah.
Sorry, there's a whole process for zooming out.
Yeah, I know. Just you look great though.
Well, you guys can't see the good stuff. It's all going into the cameras. I can show you the rifle that would be adopted shortly after.
Okay.
You see, the 90 was so successful that in 93, they came out with a truly smokeless cartridge. This was a little bit more powerful, but again, like I said, it was limited so that they could still conceivably not blow up the 8890s. They wanted an infantry rifle standardized around the 90 pattern carbine. So they came out with the Steyr-Mannlicher 1895. That's this guy. And again, he's just like a longer version of that 1890 carbine with a differently shaped cocking piece. This is like a thumb rest. On the other one, it was a cylinder. That's really it. in terms of mechanical differences. It also has an improved sight. I'll show you in just a second. But anyway, you can tell this is a long and slender rifle, very, very narrow up through the barrel and forward grip. This thing is fairly delicate feeling compared to some of the other guns. As much as the others are the same length, this thing just isn't as heavy. It's pretty light. It also is very well balanced. You can see it just sort of sets right there. It is a terrific rifle, and it's gotten sort of a bad reputation over the years that we'll get into in just a moment. All right, so if I zoom in on this guy, I really like this process.
Yeah.
Every time I say zoom in and zoom out, everybody goes running.
Someone just asked, what was the caliber of the first Mannlicher you showed?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it. I'm stuck for a moment.
Ah.
I'm cooked up.
Well, it's that complicated, all right.
Oh, I can answer that question too. On the 8890, it was a 8mm it was 8mm compressed black powder in 88. Let me do this right. In 1886, it was 11mm black powder. In 1888, it would have been 8mm compressed black powder. In 90, it would have been 8mm semi-smokeless. And then in 93, right before the 95, we get truly smokeless 8mm.
No.
Dimensionally, all those 8mm cartridges, it would have been 8x52, 8x52, and then they shortened it down to 8x50, but you can still put the 8x50 in the old 8x52 rifles. So the 8890 and 88s can still chamber that 8x50 cartridge. It actually gets kind of confusing on the exact dimensions, but again, 8mm compressed black powder, 8mm semi-smokeless, 8mm truly smokeless. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're truly smokeless by the time we get to this gun.
Right.
All right, if we take a look, we are still a straight pull action rifle. And again, this is going to be important for some of the Americans out there. Look how easy this is for me. I will even go so far as to decock this rifle. And again, this is more for the Americans. And then go ahead and pull her back. You can see it's nice and smooth. The only hesitation is that I'm trying to lean forward for the camera. You guys that are not familiar with these, just wait a minute, we'll get there. So this is a great rifle. It's still the Mannlicher magazine system. As a matter of fact, it has an updated clip. On this guy, we have a textured patch at the top so that in the dark, in the trenches, we can find the top of the clip because it has to be inserted the correct direction. Unlike remember the Gewehr 88 we talked about, they made it two directional, so they thought that was enough to get away from the patent, and it wasn't. So yeah, we insert one way. Again, when the 5th round is chambered, this thing drops out the bottom. Again, we have a big obvious hole that can let mud in. Now, this gun's pretty simple. We've got a flip over safety that you kind of have a give her cock and set. So safety's right there, easy to get to. It's a two-handed operation, unfortunately, though. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. If we let her down, she's going to come back and then cock on the closing action. It's fairly light, fairly easy to use. There's a little bit of a snap when you first give her a yank, so you kind of have to give her a pop. You can't do it too slow, but once you're past that pop, it is really light and easy on the original rifles. Additionally, we have a rear sight, which is set up for an ambitious 2600 Schritt. Schritt was an old Austrian unit of measure, close to a meter. That obviously went away. Like that was their imperial system.
I love learning this stuff. I didn't know that, you know.
Yep, we Americans are not the only ones with the old imperial system. It's just that we're the last ones to give it up, as my fans keep reminding me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a flip-up long-range sight. This is for volley fire at longer distances. But yeah, this is a terrific long rifle. This thing is set roughly, you know, you're talking about all these long guns like this in the war. They're going to be somewhere between 200 and 300 meters for their short sight. When you get into World War I, like we saw with a bunch of other guns, again, we end up fighting so close that everybody goes, what the heck were we doing with these long-range guns? These are all built to a standard of basically sniping, and then you end up in this massive conflict with, you know, hand-to-hand combat, and it just doesn't work out as well. All right, if we zoom out.
Everybody gets a good look at you.
So far, it's not too bad. It's going to take some creative editing.
You know, one day when you're eligible to appear on Stamps and Money, that'll be a great photo of you, to have you, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll end up on Money.
I'd like to be on a stamp, actually.
Intergalactical credits.
Intergalactic credits. By the time we're really old, Othais, we'll be using intergalactic credits, and I'll bet you and I are both on various money.
Okay. I think I'll just be on government watch lists, but you know.
Well, you know, work to your strengths. Okay.
Okay, so I think we get the idea. Big long gun, straight pull, rotating lock. Let's set this aside and get into probably every Austrian's favorite. This is the Stutzen. So it's the same as that Mannlicher 95. I mean, it's identical in the action and operation. It's just look at how handy and light.
Yeah.
This again, if you saw my link, there's going to be a lot of variations of short and rifles and carbines. The Stutzen is sort of the standard short rifle, which is that it emulates all the things that a rifle would do. So it has a stacking hook for putting the arms up into the, you take your rifle, make your little teepee so they stay out of the mud. It has a bayonet mount. A lot of the cavalry models didn't, etc. It also has slings bottom and side so that you could carry it either on your back or over your shoulder. It lets it be a very versatile universal short rifle. These were one of many models before World War I, but by the time they get to the conflict, Austria-Hungary is going, hey, we should not have made 19 different carbines. We should have made one short rifle. So this is a lesson that gets learned all the way around. As a matter of fact, post-war, we're going to see Austria and Hungary separate, and both countries are going to retain the Mannlicher 95, which is interesting because they thought about replacing it right before the war because they thought it would be too weak. They were worried about the thin barrels. They were worried about the weak stocks. It turns out they weathered the war really well, like I said, so they stuck around all the way through World War II. In 1930 and 31, depending on whether you're Austria or Hungary, they both converted them to the 8x56 millimeter rimmed cartridge. That is a hotter loaded cartridge. That is a cartridge that is better suited for how strong this action really is. That is a cartridge that ignores the old 8890. So that finally gets a pointed, high-powered cartridge in the 30s. This gun ends up serving through World War II. Almost a good number of the long rifles are going to be shortened for World War II to this configuration. So if you're in the US and you're in the collector's market, what we tend to see is a lot of these are actually very cheap in this configuration, except the one I'm holding is a little rarer because it's an original Stutzen in 8x50, the original cartridge, which means, again, nice and easy to operate. When they refurbished them, and this is what so many people in the US are familiar with, they just sort of slapped them back together. These were finely fitted, hand-fitted, and polished to perfection. They work well when they're in their original chambering. The ones converted to 8x56, they just sort of put them back together willy-nilly until they worked. They are stiff. You have to yank on them, especially when they're decocked. It is a complete pain in the butt to work the gun. A lot of people have an assumption that this is a very stiff gun in the US collector's market because of the refurbs. The originals, the World War I's, they're actually very fine. They work very well.
So far, it seems that the quality of the guns is actually not an issue at all, which might be what our fans and we were actually thinking when we think about.
Especially compared with like when we're talking about the French and stuff, you know, these all sound like really handy, like really solid weapons, you know.
To be fair, when we're talking about the M95 series, there's a couple weak points. Straight pulls have problems with primary extraction, which is that first little oomph, that clawing force of pulling a stiff cartridge out of the chamber. So when you have looser tolerance ammo, straight pulls start to suffer. That's just sort of a function of them. You can introduce, this gun does a pretty good job with primary extraction compared to some others because it has such good force in that initial camming action, but it's still a limitation of the straight pull. However, straight pull mechanisms are very important because these innovations go on to be big factors in auto-loading rifles. Because in auto-loading rifles, you have to have a way to make linear force become rotary locking force. And so this is where the research starts. It's just this. If you attach a gas system to this that drives this back, boom, it's an autoloader. As a matter of fact, there's a great book on Serbian rifles that has experimental designs where the Serbians post-war were strapping gas systems to the bolt handle just to make them cycle automatically. It kind of went nowhere, but they could do it.
It's
So
cool,
it's that close to an auto loader.
Wow. Wow.
Yep. But again, expensive to manufacture, and what are you really gaining? You know? So yes, they help. Do they help to a significant degree compared to just a well-done rotary bolt action? That's sort of iffy.
Okay, that was very good explanation. That was great. That's I really like the straight pull stuff. I like we're seeing something we haven't seen so far in this series. Yeah.
That's true. And if we're talking about them, we're going to see some other straight pulls when we get to Britain. We do. Everybody's been asking us. There is a Canadian Ross on the wall. We have the Ross rifle in the shop. It's sitting here. It's mine. It's staying here. So it will be available for Britain. You can stop asking me about the Ross rifle.
Okay.
The other thing is, a lot of people tend to think of another straight pull from around the same time, which is the Swiss design, the Schmidt-Reuben. We actually have, and I don't know that this will go into the edited show, but that's okay for our live guys. We actually have a Schmidt-Reuben here. They work on a different straight pull system. They have an external rod that goes through the bolt shroud. The bolt shroud has the helical cut, and it turns the lugs. The interior bolt body is stationary. Whereas on the Austrian gun, the bolt body rotates because of its engagement on the bolt shroud. On this gun, the bolt body stays still, the shroud rotates, and it rotates because of pins set through both of them. So two variations of the same idea, which is to just sort of have a straight pull rifle.
That's cool. I didn't even realize we're gonna get to a Swiss gun too.
Ah,
So,
how exotic.
yeah.
All right, so I think it's time for us to switch over to pistols. So we should probably take just a quick station break, let my cameras cool back down, and let any questions filter in for a moment.
Okay, how long do you want a station break for?
Maybe 5 minutes.
Okay, everybody, 5 minutes. We'll be back. Me, Flo, and of course, Othais, master of disaster.
Pull that down.
And yeah, well, I mean, of course, there's some questions. One of the question was how reliable are these weapons? Like, did you have any trouble shooting them, or what's the deal?
You know, I could probably address that in the video.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, let me save that one for when we go hot, because that's pretty important. What else?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people today. I'm going to have to scroll a bit because they're asking a lot of things.
That's great.
By the way, if you guys ask a question that gets missed in this hubbub, just feel free to ask me. I have my email up on my site. Through the YouTube channel is a great place to ask too. I try to get to everybody as best I can. We're getting more popular, so it's taking me a little longer, but I'm not going to ignore anybody if I can help it.
It's great that it's going well for you guys. You know, it's a really cool channel. You know.
Yeah, definitely check out the other detailed episodes he has already. And I guess you guys are doing crowdfunding right now for machine guns, right?
Yes, we're selling posters so that we can go on a trip to shoot some machine guns.
That sounds like the greatest thing ever, to go on a trip to shoot machine guns.
To be fair, I'll tell the live audience. I said 4 machine guns. Only 3 of them are machine guns. There's something even more exciting out there potentially, but the deal isn't solid yet.
Oh, so nobody's going to feel cheated or anything. Are you going to shoot the Paris guns? Are you going to get one of the ones, the first man-made objects launched into the stratosphere? Yeah.
I would do it if I could.
That would be really cool, actually, to see how really see a Paris gun in action. You know?
I wonder how many permits you have to get to do that.
Yeah.
You have to file a flight plan.
We need to. I'll talk to the MediaCraft powers that be and say it's very important for our show that we have to actually know this information so that they can find it out for us.
I mean, we could just shoot it. We could just load it with flyers for the shows, and then fire it, and then let it rain down on some town.
You know? Yeah, or shoot it over Paris.
In the current situation, that's like the best idea we came up with so far.
Actually, shooting someone over Paris right now is not a really good idea.
There is a question here. Do you have any numbers on how much the Austro-Hungarians relied on German weapons for like replacements, or were there any notable?
Yeah, the further into the war, the more German equipment they would start to use. But realistically, they did have plenty of the Mannlicher designs in place. As a matter of fact, earlier in the war, you see Germans acquire Austro-Hungarian weapons at times, especially on the commercial market, because the Austro-Hungarians They didn't start really stressing until Italy rolled in. So they had some industry and they had some surplus. It's actually kind of odd. The Austro-Hungarians tend to be one of the better prepared armies at the beginning of the war in terms of having men and equipment in the field. It's just that you guys know from the history, they just sort of start fumbling that ball. So it's very odd when you're looking at it. They look like they should have it together, especially because being a dual monarchy, they had a factory at Steyr and at Budapest basically doing the same job twice for just the reason of national pride. As a matter of fact, I should probably record that too. And you know what? I'll go ahead and throw that in the show too. Let me hold on to that too. So I got two things: reliability and then national pride.
But you know, it was such a crazy place back then. You know, 15 versions of the national anthem, depending on what your native language was.
Yep, I'm still recording audio, right? Okay. All right, so we can cook this back up. I'll answer the two questions, and we'll go to the pistols.
Right.
So let me get my camera live, and I'll just answer them as if you asked them, and then you guys can stitch them.
Yeah, we all do this in post-production. We're professionals here.
We're gonna get rid of my hiccups too.
You want me to try scaring you?
You've already scared me.
Give me a blank.
You told me how well equipped the Austro-Hungarian Empire was in 1914. That scares the crap out of me.
In terms of reliability, these Mannlicher rifles, they did really, really well. The one potential problem, and it didn't turn out to be a severe one, is that when you're on the Mannlicher system, your feed lips, those little pieces that sort of drive the last little bit of the cartridge, they are attached to the clip, not the gun. So they're flimsy. So if these become dented or maligned, you can have misfeeds. That's really the weakness of this gun. Otherwise, it's just the cartridge, like we said, it was just too weak for the rifle itself. They really could have gotten away with a much better, more modern cartridge if they weren't so stuck on preserving the old 8890s like I covered first, which is a good reason why I covered it, because that gun is the anchor for this system. Other than, again, Mannlicher system, we got mud problems. Now, let me get over to that other question. Wait, what was the other question? Oh, dual monarchy. Yep.
Right. You know, in one of our very first episodes, we mentioned something I got from historian Norman Stone. The Austro-Hungarians might have had very good equipment, but as the war broke out, right before the war broke out, their army was 5 times the size of the British army. But Britain actually spent more than Austria-Hungary did on their armies.
Wow.
Even though the Austria-Hungary.
That's true.
And might not have been with the guns. We know, of course, when during the Carpathian offensives in January, February, March 1915, Austro-Hungarian soldiers were marching through -30, -40 degrees snows with cardboard sole boots, because that's the only equipment they got, so.
The British did a really good job of modernizing their infantry as time went on. They sort of put an emphasis on keeping the equipment up to date. And so you have things like a standardized short rifle by the time, like long before World War I rolls around, they have a standard short rifle. Austria-Hungary still has standard long rifles. And by the way, 1895 is the last thing they adopted in terms of a rifle. So yes, they have plenty of equipment, but they didn't spend it continuously refurbishing everything. They made this stuff, sent it out there, and it sat. So, 1895 to 1914, at a time when arms are evolving rapidly, that's not a huge production number. You know what I mean? So, granted, they had a lot of equipment, but that doesn't mean that they had top-of-the-line equipment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
As for production availability, Austria-Hungary kind of positioned itself well by accident. Being a dual monarchy, they had 2 factories producing their rifles. They had one in Steyr and one in Budapest, and that was because of the national pride of the Hungarians. They wanted, it's so strange, but it's sort of a separate but equal system, so that the Hungarians have what the Austrians have, and of course, with exception to Budapest's manufacturing ability, thankfully, usually the Hungarians had the worst version of things, and so that caused all sorts of problems. But that's a separate political story. Budapest and Steyr manufactured identical rifles. The parts are absolutely interchangeable. They often sent parts to each other for assembly when one was down on something or up on another. So when they go into the war, it's kind of one of those lucky side effects. They now have 2 rifle factories to manufacture their standard rifles.
Very cool. Well, for them.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. All right, getting into pistols. Let me cut that all right for a second because I've said that 900 times. We're still recording. We're still good? Okay, good. Getting into pistols, I should probably start with the Rosten-Gasser. So let me pull this guy out. This is a Austro-Hungarian revolver, and I'm probably going to have to zoom in on it for you guys to really see it at all.
Okay.
It looks fairly big, actually.
Now I see us.
Hey.
Oh, there we go.
Like my freeze frame?
Yeah, I see it. Oh, yeah.
Let me know when I'm
Yeah,
up.
just like Jay Giles' band.
I'm going to hand you guys like 90 video files and one big audio file, and you're going to hate me.
I don't mind.
It'll sync. Tony's going to be so mad.
Our editors and camera people in the background, they're cheering right now.
Tell Tony it'll sync.
You heard that, Tony? He heard you.
Okay. So actually, all he has to do is lay in the audio file in Premiere and then sync everything to the audio file over and over again.
Yeah.
He's going to cry out of joy.
Yep, tears of joy. German tears of joy.
Here, cut the audio on the cameras. Make it hard for him. So, yeah, the Rosten-Gasser is going to be fairly unique among revolvers just because of its 8-shot capacity. This uses a 8mm Rosten-Gasser cartridge, which is actually very, very similar to that 8mm French revolver cartridge we were talking about, French ordnance.
Yeah.
So really about the same ballistic properties. You're looking at kind of the power of a modern 380-ish. That's the ballpark. Anyway, this gun is a gate loader, so you would take it up in your left hand like we talked about for cavalry. Yeah. You would open the gate on the right. Now it has what's called the Athais system. The Athais system is that it disconnects the hammer and blocks it. So now we can pull the trigger and the cylinder will rotate without activating the hammer. So we can load a cartridge, click, load a cartridge, click. If we want to unload the gun when we're done firing, it's the same thing. We have a spring-activated push rod here. So I would click, push, click, push, and you can get quite handy with it when you're not trying to show it to a camera. Wow. So 8 rounds, pretty good capacity for a revolver, fairly reliable system. And unique to this is, well, not completely unique to this, but it has a very easy disassembly system. I can pull a rod here, twist and pull, and the whole cylinder comes out. I don't really need to do that for you guys today, but I wouldn't mind showing you the internals. So if I pull down the trigger guard and flip open this guy and pull this piece of wood out of the way, that's it. That's the whole thing.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep. So she's a double single action, which means I can either manually cock that hammer back and then pull the trigger, or I can pull the trigger all the way. Here, let me get this trigger guard out of the way. Actually, it'll slip right out. I can just pull that trigger and it'll activate the hammer, or I can manually cock that hammer back and then release it with that trigger. The other unique thing about this revolver compared to some others is that it does not have a firing pin on the hammer. It's actually set down in the frame so that the hammer strikes that firing pin just like you would on a hammer-fired pistol. Fairly unique, 1898. Here, let me zoom out. There we are.
That's a good one, that one.
Yeah. 8 shots also seems unusual.
Fairly unique, started in 1898. These meant to be replaced several times over, but would end up being produced all the way to 1919 because they just couldn't get off them. They were being made in Vienna. They were designed by August Rost. They were produced by Gasser. Since it was external to the whole current complex, it was easy to keep these things rolling off the assembly line, so they did all the way through the war. It's just another one of those old legacy guns that just stayed in service because it worked, and it worked well. So plenty of these in the Austro-Hungarian Empire during the war.
Cool. And I imagine they didn't have any problems like the French had with the Spanish ammunition, like you had to, you know, the bullets from a different factory were not the same as the bullets from another factory.
Oh, the magazines, no. Being a revolver, there's no problem with magazine interchangeability. Yeah. So, yeah, no, they function well, but they're slow. They're another slow loading, slow unloading revolver, just like we've seen before, being a gate loader. So we get into automatics. The Austro-Hungarians really embraced automatics fairly early. So there's a number of designs to look at. The first is not actually a quote-unquote military pistol for the Austro-Hungarians because it was never officially adopted. It's the Mannlicher 1905. So this was produced, there's actually a 1901 and a 1905 version. They're very similar. This gun was sold commercially. It would be adopted by external militaries, particularly Argentina, but in Austria-Hungary, it just didn't quite make the trials. However, it was a very popular private purchase, so plenty of these would have turned up on the battlefield. If we zoom in, we can get a closer look at its unique features.
My hair looks good today.
Yeah, it does. I love how your haircut changes throughout the shooting blocks if you binge watch our show.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's funny, like at some point when I click on all the videos, it's like, oh no, he had that haircut back then.
I haven't even noticed, too. It's funny.
Okay, good. Oh,
you
what?
know something funny? When I was I'd been on vacation for a few weeks. When I was in Houston, I was with my mother. My mother's in her late 70s, and she's, doesn't understand the YouTube fame channel kind of thing.
Right.
We went to the Houston Museum of Fine Arts to see, there was a Mark Rothko exhibition, and I like Rothko, and she doesn't, so we thought we'd have good arguments. So, and we walked in, me and my little old lady mom, and the security guard walks up to us, and he goes, "Are you Indy Nidell?" And I said, "Yeah. I really like your channel." And I said, and the first thing I said was, "Oh, thanks. This is my mom."
By the way, was that the moment she was finally impressed?
Yeah, she you could see her a little like, oh, yeah. She gets it, she knows that we have, a couple 100,000 subscribers and it's lots of views all over the world, but she didn't quite get it till she saw it in person.
Well, that's all right. I'm never going to be able to get a deal again because I went to the gun show and got recognized 3 times over.
Oh, no way. Oh, man.
All right, so let's get into this guy. If we take a look, it's got a really unique profile. And the big part of this is a pistol from back when one-handed shooting was still popular. So even though it's sort of arched forward, it's designed for me to point almost like a fencing saber. Just keep that in mind. I'm supposed to point down the length of my body with a slight kind of, arm lock. Look at how that kind of drops my angle. So it works out. It looks so awkward, but when you're actually holding it, and I'm sorry you all can't hold it right now, it feels right for one-handed shooting. For two-handed shooting like we're used to nowadays, it's terrible. But this gun is a semi-automatic stripper clip fed pistol, actually. So if I draw this to the rear, we would feed it from either an 8 or 10 round clip, depending on which model we had, because there are some variations. But literally, we would set the stripper clip and strip rounds in. They remain in the gun. The stripper clip gets thrown to the side. So just like the Caveira 98. So this gun is what's known as a delayed blowback or a retarded blowback. It doesn't have a locking action. Instead, the weight of the springs keep it shut a little bit longer while you're firing. That weight is increased by a small cam set down inside that adds additional pressure to the hammer spring so that the hammer itself will resist the rearward motion of the slide. A lot of people consider that of dubious merit, but it handles a pretty good cartridge. The 7.63 Mannlicher cartridge, here I'll strip one off for you guys. 7.63 Mannlicher, this cartridge is pretty much proprietary to this gun. It was never really standard issue for anybody other than Argentina, but decent little cartridge, decent power, and a decent capacity. And it's a very, very early semi-automatic. You're talking about 1901 to 1905 are all the big variations of this gun. Again, popular private purchase, still not really an official arm. Handy little thing.
Except Argentina, you said?
Yeah, Argentina did adopt them.
Okay, wow, interesting.
Yep. So yeah, it's a terrific shooter. It functioned well by all accounts. We're going to be shooting it for our show, so you'll get to see some more of this thing. But yeah, just some tiny sights is the only real problem with it. Otherwise, terrific. Oh, one big feature of this gun is that the sort of lock work for it is not in the gun. The frame, the solid part of the frame is wrapped around that magazine, and then there's really just sort of a thin plate that wraps around the lock work. So you have the frame, all the action is set on the left and right side of the gun, and then there's just a clip-over plate that's keeping it under wrap. So it's sort of like an exoskeleton gun compared to the normal thing we see with semi-automatics.
Right.
It also looks rather unusual.
Yeah, it's an odd looking gun. We're going to see some of these lines again in just a moment. All right, zooming out. send everybody running for cameras.
There's also in our background now someone fiddling on the camera. Is everything all right?
It's Tony.
There's a what now?
It's Tony.
Tony is
fiddling with our camera.
Oh, okay. Do you need a moment?
I don't know. We
Fine.
okay. Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
Okay. And everybody out there just had the last 40 seconds to, you know, see a man about a dog, make a cheese sandwich, whatever, get a cookie.
So this is a big name, big design in terms of the Austro-Hungarian consciousness. It has a lot of principles we're going to see on other guns that did get adopted by the military. So it was really worth mentioning because it was in the trenches and it was influential. So setting it aside, we're going to get into an actual issued pistol, the 07 Roth Steyr. And again, we're going to have to zoom in because these are quite small.
Okay. I like looking at these handguns.
No, they every one so far looks completely different. Like completely different design. Like
Yeah, the first one had that.
I'm not overheating yet, that's for sure. My close-up camera is going to go before my far. Good? Monitor's not up. Okay, cool. Let me go again. All right, looking at the Roth Steyr, I should probably show you the other side. It's got a little bit more going on. This is sort of misnamed. It was developed by Carol Krinka, who then sold the patent to George Roth, who then licensed it to Steyr, which is how we end up with Roth Steyr. Poor Krinka got written out of the history, I guess. This gun's very unique in that it has a rotating lock breech. So when we fire, our barrel and bolt travel rearward together for a little bit, and then our barrel sort of twists out of the way, and we're left with the bolt returning on its own and coming back forward. We're going to do a video that has a nice animation for this that gets into the details so they don't have to strip this on air. It is a bit like a Nerf gun to a lot of people because it is a cocking bolt like the Nambus. I got to let that follow her down. There we go. So there she's cocked. Another interesting thing is this was intended for cavalry initially. It would later be sort of fielded a little bit wider, but it never became a universal officer's pistol. If you can see that rear of the firing pin sticking out right here, can you guys make that out?
Yeah.
Okay. When I start to pull the trigger, you'll see it moving rearward. If I put my thumb on it, it'll help you see it. See it kind of popping back. That was requested by the cavalry because they didn't like the single action light release. They wanted the feel of a double action. So it's sort of a hybrid single double action striker fired pistol, which is that I pull, it cocks it a bit further, and then, and I'm gonna have to take this to the side for a second because I don't want to just dry fire it because that wire it out. There we go. Then it releases it all the way down. So see, she's disappeared because she's actually fired the pistol now. So just a unique little feature that it's got a heavier double action style pull that recocks that firing pin a bit more so that the cavalry felt like they weren't accidentally setting off the pistol when they didn't mean to, because at that time, people seemed to walk around with their fingers on the trigger all the time. I really don't know why, but it's not until much later that you get this idea of just keep your finger away from that trigger. I mean, look at old military photos. Everybody's got their finger right there all the time.
Yeah.
But this, again, is a stripper clip fed pistol. So same as before. Actually, this one has a little tab at the top to help you with it. But it's the same thing. You pull her to the rear, you line up your stripper clip, and then you strip them off into the gun. They stay in the gun. You throw the clip off to the side. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Austro-Hungarian also obviously really loves stripper clip technology for their pistols, M-block clip technology for their rifles. Sort of an odd pairing, but hey, it works. These guys would serve through the war. Obviously, they use their own cartridge, which is actually here, which is 8mm Roth Steyr. And you're going to start to see that we're having some issues with logistics because we have commercially bought 7.63 Mannlicher pistols. We have military 8mm Roths. We're going to see a 9mm, a 32 Frommer, and we're going to see a 32. We're getting into a lot of different cartridges. So keep that in mind. Every gun I'm going to show you is using a different cartridge from here on out.
That's crazy, though.
Yep. So the thing is, the Austrians really seem to allow industry to make their picks to the point that they didn't force them to standardize on a round. They would just tailor the round to the gun. So zooming out.
This one also looks, I mean, the design is really interesting. Just, you know, looking at it from first glance. I mean, I have not the slightest idea about handguns, but you know, they all look very interesting so far.
Who knew Austria-Hungary was going to be an interesting one?
Yeah, definitely.
By all accounts, these would serve pretty well. They're fairly robust. They're a little bit thick for a one-handed shooter because that's, again, you're supposed to be shooting one-handed back then. Two-handed feels pretty good, though. We're going to have a video up on our channel about these soon enough.
Okay.
Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
Yep, you can call it C&Rsenal, or, you know, since the truncated A is at, you can call it Cat-Arsenal, which includes the words cat and arse. You know, why not? C-Pound-Arsenal.
Sarn.
Do you want more?
I'm just waiting for you to make anal jokes.
Are we
Okay,
there?
well-
Are we there yet?
All right.
This is going to be edited for, so it's only the live people that get the anal jokes.
So they can,
You get
I was there when Indy and Flo made his first anal
the
joke.
cat arse anal, cat arsenal. I mean, that's you get everything. You get two versions.
Can you do several more takes so that the edited show just shows you only mispronouncing it? Because I feel like that's just starting to be a running gag.
Yeah. Just keep repeating it. Make it like a 5-minute blooper clip of me just saying C-Pound-Arsenal, cat arsenal.
Send Arsenal.
But subscribe to it because it's good. It is really good, actually. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting channel.
Yeah.
All right, next up is going to be one of my favorite pistols, the Steyr Hahn. This is considered the model 1912. The gun was developed in 1911, but that's when we see adoptions by Romania. It would serve with Romania through the war, but also Austria-Hungary would come around just a few years later to pick it up for their inventory. This is a fantastic pistol. We should probably zoom in so we can get a look at it.
Okay. This will be good.
The chat loves all the variations we had. Maybe,
Oh, yeah.
maybe we should put up a vote or something.
For what we should actually call his channel. Okay, let's have a vote. Tell him we'll have a vote. I'm telling you now, actually, we'll have a vote.
Okay. Am I recording? The live audience is getting real familiar with my gut. Oh, let me reach for this while I'm thinking of it.
That's why I have a desk. Oh, you have a desk too, but
Ta-da!
there we go.
Steyr Hahn is one of my favorites. I don't know why. I just really like it. It's designed around the idea of a cavalry pistol again. However, it would get broader use than the old Rothsteyr. If I flip it around, you can see a little bit more of the controls going on here. This, again, is going to be a clip-fed pistol. I'm actually shy of rounds because we were out shooting this one already. It uses a proprietary 9mm Steyr. As a matter of fact, the action on this is so strong that it would go on to be rechambered in 9mm Parabellum because they were retained by Austria until they were absorbed by Germany. So Germany made the decision to go ahead and keep the gun around because, hey, it was pretty reliable other than being an irritating stripper clip-fed system instead of a detachable box magazine. So, again, there's the cartridge. Not too bad. We're getting up to a nice military cartridge here.
Yeah.
Now, this gun is fairly unique in that it's often attributed to Krinka. It uses Krinka's rotating barrel, the same rotating barrel system that we saw on the Roth. So let me get that guy out. They both use rotating barrel locks. The difference is pretty astounding, though, because this is way over-engineered by comparison. The Steyr Hahn is very simple. It just has the helical cuts in the receiver. The barrel has some lugs on it. It spins, unlocks the action. It's terrific. It's also a hammer fire like the Mannlicher. As a matter of fact, if we look, you can kind of tell, especially up here, we've borrowed some styling from the Mannlicher. So now we've got sort of the rear clip bridge and sight from the Mannlicher. Also, this switch here on the Mannlicher depresses the interrupter and allows you to empty the gun early. The Steyr Hahn also has that feature, and as a matter of fact, on the earlier prototype photos, it looks almost identical to the one off the Mannlicher. It's very clear that some of the styling and features came from the Mannlicher. It's obvious the locking action came from the Rothsteyr, and there's a gun we do not have pictured today, which is the Colt 1902, which has a frame and slide lock almost identical to this system. It is very clear, especially with the way the flat springs inside work with the hammer, that this was derived from the Colt 1902, the Rothsteyr, and the Mannlicher 1905. It's sort of a hybrid gun. So I tend to lend a little bit of credit to the idea that it's sort of a commission pistol, like we saw with the Gavar 88 that merged a whole bunch of available features.
All right.
But this is a hammer fire pistol. So it's only single action rather. And the interesting thing is we have a safety on this side, and because of the emphasis on cavalry, there was a fear that you would lock up your safety and then draw it to fire and find your hammer locked. So the safety actually disconnects automatically when we cock the hammer.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
But again, slide operated, stripper clip fed, no detachable magazine, and this gun looks so much like a modern pistol. I love handing it to people at the range, watching them try to disconnect the magazine because it won't.
Because they won't.
Yep. The other thing that's interesting is the follower holds this gun to the rear. So if you have nothing in it and you want to let it slide forward, you release the lever on the other side here to depress the depress the interrupter, which also tugs the follower down. That lets the slide forward. We have a video. It's our first 10 episodes video where I managed to spray myself in the face with this gun because out of habit of handling it empty, I depressed the interrupter release instead of releasing the safety I had locked on, and that instantly dumped the magazine into my face.
Wow.
So, terrific gun. A little bit complicated that you have 2 levers to keep track of, but hey, it's a wonderful shooter, pretty good powered cartridge, and fantastic for its time period.
Now, how hard is it for this and for some of the others? How hard is it for you or a collector or anyone these days to get ammunition these days? For how hard is it to get a stripper clip now for that?
Why don't you zoom me out, actually?
Okay.
While we're at it.
You heard me. Yeah.
Very good. Recording? Recording good. Stripper clips and other accessories for a lot of these can be common, especially for the Steyr Hahn, because it serves for so long that these are in inventory until after World War II. Other guns like the Rothsteyr and things like that, there's a little bit more competition for the parts. It sort of depends, though. It's very odd. One of the harder ones to get is like a 3-shot Berthier clip. Just stuff like that. It's weird what little pieces just go missing over the years. It's not across the board, but generally it's not too hard. But yeah, this is a great military handgun. This is the standard handgun for the Austro-Hungarian's land army during World War I. The other stuff wandered in, but this is what's supposed to be on paper their primary handgun. Mm-hmm. So terrific, functions well. Some weakness on the fact that we have to feed from a stripper clip, which is a little fiddly. But other than that, we're dealing with a pretty good locking breech pistol.
Who would have thought of that?
Not you.
No, you neither.
Not me neither. No. Maybe Tony or Marcus.
You guys ready for more?
Absolutely.
Always.
Okay. Now we're going to move into Hungary. You see, Hungarian national pride is rising. They've got their own factory for the rifles, but now they want some of their own designs. And so we have Rudolf Fromer, who has been working on pistols since the turn of the century. He has a design that's been evolving over the years, and it looks kind of awkward by 1910, but by 1911, 1912, it's settling into a handy little pocket pistol. That is the Fromer Stop. And we're going to have to zoom in on this because you can tell he's very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, much smaller than all the other ones so far.
Hi, Internet. By the way, if we triple fund, I said I'd do a bearskin rug photo, so you guys can get a lot more of this.
Okay, awesome. Because, that's what people are writing in about, right?
Yeah, they really want that.
It's like 90% of the comments about that.
Yeah.
They were saying, Indy, you got some work to do. You got to grow one of those, really. So I'll catch you one day.
That and a mustache. People actually want you to have a mustache.
They do?
Yeah.
You should probably grow a
mustache a couple of years ago, actually, but that was before the show. What kind of mustache? Like a
curly
villain mustache or like a...
Well, Lord Kitchener, maybe?
Bring back the toothbrush. I'm sure it'll go over well there.
I looked pretty good with the Magnum PI a couple of years ago, which was surprising. I didn't think I would. But
I feel like you just look like you were drinking soup too fast.
Pardon?
I said with a Magnum PI, I think you look like you were drinking soup too fast.
Well, That's probably true. One thing I learned from having a Magnum PI is you got to be really careful brushing your teeth, or else everything smells like mint all day long.
That's me with everything. I know my last 3 meals because I can just smell different parts of my mustache.
Yeah, maybe a little pencil. You know.
I should probably talk about the gun though. Okay, ready?
Okay, well. Yeah.
Frommer really liked long recoil systems. We actually see these in the Browning Auto 5s and the Shosha and things like that. This is a system in which the barrel and the bolt recoil all the way to the rear together. So if I draw this back, we're just pulling the bolt back. But when fired, you can see how the whole thing's recoiling. It would go all the way back, which I can't do without breaking my finger here. But it would be driven all the way back. They would lock rearward, and then the barrel would come forward, and then the bolt would come forward. That's long recoil. So it's kind of hard to drive a long recoil system in a pistol. It's not a very successful pistol system, but Frommer managed to get it to work on this guy. It uses 765 Frommer, which is a 32 ACP cartridge. I mean, it's identical to 32 ACP, but it's loaded hotter. As a matter of fact, that's what we had to do to shoot our video for this, is hot load 32 ACP. Because it's a stronger locking action, it could handle it. So it is a lock breech pistol, but it fires a hot loaded small cartridge. This has a grip safety and no other manual safety, so it cannot be fired unless you grip and then pull that trigger. And I don't want to dry fire this. Okay. I'll let that hammer down. She's a hammer fire. And you can tell she's got some beautiful lock work on here. It's a fairly complicated little system. There's 2 sets of springs in this overtop channel. It's honestly ridiculously complicated for such a small handgun. But on the plus side, it's a heel release, and I'm sorry, it's stiff, magazine-fed pistol. This is getting to what we're used to. So the Hungarians rather like this design. They adopt it for their own personal home guard army, and they love it quite a bit. By the way, it doesn't have an official model number until after the war. It was literally just called the Stop. They were borrowing the English word to sort of sell the idea that it will stop your opponent.
That's cool. That's yeah.
All right, you can back me out.
No, it's a stop.
I'm gonna freeze frame for a second.
Yeah, I like the size of it. I mean, it's tiny compared to some of the others we've been seeing.
This is a beautifully compact pistol, and you know, if it weren't for the fact that it was a hot loaded cartridge, it's really more of a police pistol at the time than a military one. I guess they managed to just convince everybody that the hotter loaded 32 was somehow worth it as a military round. Although, again, fairly reliable, fairly easy to use, simple grip safety, magazine fed. This is a terrifically modern handgun for that time. It's just over-engineered and expensive to make. I honestly think a lot of its adoption had to do with national pride. Now, because of this pistol, the Austrians kind of go, whoa, 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 we want a 32 pistol.
Me too, me too.
So they reach for this. Now, this is the Steyr Piper 1909. Some people will call this a 1908, but I trust my Austrian book on it, and they're saying that both this and a 25 ACP version were both made in 1909. You just have to differentiate them from caliber, not by year. Let's zoom in, though, because she's awfully small, as you can tell.
Yeah. I bet Conrad had one of these.
In his handbag?
In his handbag, yeah. In his Conrad von Holtzen bag. We should start selling that as merch, Conrad von Holtzen bags.
Totally.
Good, okay. This is actually a pistol designed by a Belgian man named Jean Warnon. He was very important in revolver technology. He invented the rebounding hammer. But he sold his patents to Nicholas Piper, son of the famous Henry Piper. Nicholas Piper licensed them to Steyr, so now it's the Steyr Piper. Yet again, just like with Krinka, we have the inventor sort of written out of history. But this was sold commercially. This is really not meant to be a military pistol. It's just that Steyr produced these for commercial sale. They loaded up on them and then stopped production with a bunch of inventory so they could sell them out slowly piecemeal. And then sort of, 1913 hits and the Austrians start looking around for 32. They have a bunch of inventory. They buy up a stack. World War I hits. They buy up even more. So none were made for the war itself. It's just that they were sitting in a warehouse ready to go. Now, this one's technically a commercial model, because it does not have a lanyard ring, which would have been situated right here. All they did is they milled out under the grip and set a little ring in there. That's it. That's all they did to make the military. Otherwise, it's identical. So it's a unique pistol in that it uses a tipping barrel. Dun, dun, dun. And it has no extractor or ejector. So what you would do is you would load up your magazine, which again is a detachable box mag. Yeah. So we'd load up our magazine, slap it in the pistol. On a normal slide-operated pistol, we would have to work the slide to chamber the first round. But this one, in order to have a more powerful spring, yada, 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 they went ahead and had tipping barrels so that you don't have to fight the spring in the action. It's good for people with weak hands, that sort of thing. You just take your first round, drop it in the chamber, and then close her up. There's no extractor in this system, like I said, so there's nothing actively pulling the case out. It uses extra sort of gas blowback force to just go ahead and drive that spent casing out. That would prove to be a weakness for this, along with some other things I'm going to talk about in just a moment. This gun, weirdly, being set up to sort of, and by the way, there's a big lever on the side that I'm hitting to do that. Weirdly, it's set up like you would never realistically have to operate this slide unless you had some sort of jam. And even then, it's not like you have an extractor to help clear the jam. So basically, when this pistol jams, it becomes a complete pain in the butt to work with. So you would think that this spring, which by the way is fitted over the barrel, and there's a hook here that engages the slide when we close it so that now the spring is working. You would think that that spring would be extremely strong to help because it's a blowback pistol. There's no locking action, so the strength of the spring and the weight of the slide, and you can tell it's a very small slide, those two things are going to be what resists that 32 ACP cartridge when we fire it. It's a fairly weak spring as well. So despite its size and its small cartridge and its beautiful grip, this thing is kind of a pain to shoot. It's got really high recoil. It's hard to get follow-up shots, and it sort of bludgeons itself to death. As a matter of fact, when we took this one out to fire for the show, we broke 2 firing pins just trying to keep her running on the range because it's self-destructive to a certain degree. As a matter of fact, after the war, the Austrians, trying to keep these in police use, would redesign them and rework them. It's called the 34. They have a huge slide at that point with an extractor and other proper fittings like it should have had to begin with because the dang things were cracking themselves apart. So a reasonably good pistol, not the most reliable just because it had a tendency to beat itself to death, and it would beat your hand to death too.
Yeah.
One other weird thing about this, which is kind of annoying, it's a heel release on the bottom. If you look carefully, and I'm sorry it's going to be hard to see until we edit, there's 2 notches on this magazine. That's because being a commercial pistol, it was designed for pleasure shooting as well. If you push this into the first click, it acts as a magazine disconnect so that you can load 1 round and fire it, and then load 1 round and then fire it and not have to engage the magazine.
Right, okay.
Which sounds like you could just ignore it, but the problem is being a heel release, you often catch, when you're trying to pull her out, you often catch that second lip, and then you have to yank and hit the button again. It's just another thing to fiddle with. Really not the best choice in terms of a military pistol. This is probably the weakest thing in the Austrian inventory at that moment, but still a fantastically interesting piece to see.
Yeah. Certainly a handsome piece.
Yeah, by all
means.
means.
It's beautiful. Very thin, very light. Beautiful rake. We expected to be one of our favorite shooters, but once we got out there, it was really pummeling to the hand.
Wow.
Did you have some, so you said it's the fiddling is like a pain in the ass. I assume you had to fiddle with it?
Zoom out. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Drinking pause.
Let me know when you're up.
In case anybody's wondering how much coffee I'm drinking, it's actually wine. What I can say.
Yeah, when you pull this guy, it's sort of, there's a first, it's hard to explain, but there's a first pulse. I hit the switch, it kind of pops the magazine a little distance, and I'd say 50% of the time it pops the magazine just far enough to relock. And now you've got to pump it again, and your thumb can't shift between the lever and the tab, so you got to get your other hand involved. It just becomes a whole nightmare if you mess it up on the first go. It's a decent commercial pistol, except for the fact that it beats your hand to death. But not a very good military pistol. But luckily, this is sort of like the last thing we're adding in. We still have our Rastengasser. We still have our Roth Steyr. We still have our Steyr Hahn, and the Hungarians still have the somewhat better reliable Frommer Stop. This is just sort of like, this honestly is being purchased for officers that don't really expect to use it at the front anyway. And honestly, this and a 25 ACP version, an even smaller version, were bought. Combined total roughly 10,000. So it's not, it's not making a huge dent in the war effort. It's just worth mentioning because it was sort of the last thing that got pulled in specifically from Austria.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Now, in addition to these guys and other things, the Austrians bought a lot of C96s. They loved the C96. It would have been fairly standard issue. I just didn't drag one out because we've already covered it. But yeah, that's really it. They would have also inherited some other pistols from Germany and rifles from Germany. But again, we had the German episode already.
Right. Cool. So is this what we got for today? Yep.
Yep, that's our wrap. So if you guys got
that was great.
questions,
especially the pistols.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Some really good looking guns. Okay. Everybody out there, once again, if you don't know who we are, I'm Indy Nidell from the Great War, and this is Flo, our social media guy, and I don't always have the hiccups. And let's see, how many good names can we give? C&Rsenal, Carsenal, Cat, Arse, Anal, C, Pound, Retsinal, okay. Anyhow, we'd like to really thank you, Othais, once again, because I love these. I love sitting here. I mean, we're hours and hours ahead of you, so it's, it's like 9 in the evening here. But I love that you take time to do this, and I love these collaborations, and everybody out there should watch your channels. Why don't you say goodbye to everybody, Othais?
Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Oh, before I say goodbye, did you guys want to do any sort of extra questions to film out for the edited segment, or are you good? You got enough time? Did you get enough for the whole?
We still have time, and I think the people have some questions. So...
Okay, do it. Bring some on.
But we need to switch our camera first, so it's
okay.
still...
I'll cool mine off.
So everybody, this is a bathroom break or coffee break for a minute,
and then we do some small Q&A stuff.
Switch me off for cooling. I've still got a camera for a second, so I can talk to the audience. I am going to take a lunch break for about 2 hours after this, and then I told some people I'd play some Verdun tonight. So for those of you who are watching, if you want to get on Verdun, we've got the Mumble channel up and everything.
Everybody's been asking me to play, of course, in our comments every week and stuff, and I still haven't played yet. But I want to
point out that I've started hanging out with the devs. I know I have a list of all the guns that they're releasing, and I'm trying to get them files to help them figure out their art assets. So
that's cool.
You're just being lazy now.
No, I'm not being lazy. I was specifically waiting since, I mean, now in our show, it's the end of November 1915. I've written up to the end of January. Verdun starts in February. I was going to wait till the actual battle starts before I start playing Verdun.
It's okay to admit that you're just bad at the game, Indy.
I haven't tried it yet. I am not bad at the game, although maybe I would be. No, I'm a pretty good gamer, actually.
That game's got a learning curve like a brick wall.
Yeah. Tony and me, like in the first games we played with the fans, that was like, I would say not fun. But
they laugh at you.
But it gets to you. It's like, it's really cool.
May and I, when we play together, we've got enough hours under our belt as a squad that I think our squad rank is like 75, or no, it's like 80 something. So yeah, our squad rank's huge now, just the two of us without any help.
Wow.
So.
Cool. Well, so to anybody that's thinking of writing in telling me to play, you'll probably, I say you'll have to wait until February, but you'll actually have to wait until I write the Verdun episodes, which is going to be before Christmas. So I might be playing by Christmas.
And of course, we're going to announce that if it happens.
Oh yeah, of course,
we're going to
announce that.
No, somebody in the chat. Don't forget, somebody grab me the chat log so I can go back over it, because I never get to read those.
You're gonna do that, Flo, right?
Yeah, I will try my best.
Right.
You don't have to do that. One of the fans can do it. It's Control A, select all.
Yes, somebody from the fans, please do a chat log, because for some reason YouTube says that this video has thousands of comments, but they are not shown.
Yeah, we never got the French ones back.
Yeah,
I have a copy of the German ones because my gun wrangler Jay, you want to come on camera? It's not going to go out for the editor. Jay, you sure? You good?
Yeah.
That's good. Jay don't like being in front of the camera.
Hi, Jay.
He's super important.
Hi,
He's
Jay.
the only other one that pays attention. It's me, May, and Jay most of the time.
Wait, Jay, were you? I can't see you, so I don't know how old you are. But were you around in the late '70s and the early '80s when those commercials? You can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay.
No.
Okay, you're gonna. That's your homework is to look that up on YouTube. You can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay, or you.
But yeah, we've got Jay's our gun wrangler, and if he's becoming our everything wrangler, he mostly catches. He's got OCD, so he catches all the crap I miss. And then May is obvious talent, and then Susie's been helping with hand loading and organizing all the ammo because that's a real nightmare. I luckily don't have to touch ammo because otherwise there's no way I'd get through the show if I had to organize ammo. But,
how often do you go to shows?
Gun shows or whenever they're around. I'm a member of the Collectors Association in the state, and
this weekend.
Yeah, that was a Mike Ken anyway. We're missing one now to hang out with you guys, jerks.
Ooh, sorry.
You had to take over my Thanksgiving and my gun show weekend.
Oh,
I'm out of money anyway.
Did you guys have a nice Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we had a great time. We chilled out with the neighbors.
I played ukulele, bass, and piano at an Elvis tribute.
Yeah, you guys don't have Thanksgiving over there, so
no. And I was in Sweden. Of course, we're in Germany now. But
you could just explain
the place
it.
We were playing is at a Mexican American type bar restaurant, so we did a whole Elvis thing for Thanksgiving. Fun.
What you should do is just explain to all the Europeans that Thanksgiving is the day where we put gravy on everything.
And it's so simple to understand. People, why do you celebrate? That's the
Take all the foods you like, put gravy on them. Thanksgiving.
Well, when I first ended up in Europe, living in Europe, and people would say, "What was my favorite holiday?" And I'd say it was Thanksgiving, and they'd say, "We don't celebrate that." I'd say, "I know," but the reason it's my favorite holiday is there's no presents, there's no religion, there's no patriotism, there's just eat. And say, isn't it great we had all this? You cut through all the bullshit, and we brought
in the harvest. It's time to eat it.
And cover it with gravy.
Yeah.
So that's a great holiday. There's no niche. There's no there's no
tie-in. It's hang out with your family, eat some food, cut a rug.
Yeah. Oh, and my first Thanksgiving in Europe was 1993, and I was living in Prague then, and we had a bunch of Czech people, and of course you always watch football games, American football games on TV in the afternoon and the evening when you're full, right? But of course there was no football on TV, so we set up their Atari, and we set it to the two teams to play each other, and that was what we had as our football game, making bets on the plays of the Atari playing.
Indy, you're from Texas. Do you ever make those guys biscuits and gravy?
I do biscuits and gravy in Stockholm sometimes. Yes, I have not done it for these guys. I definitely.
No, you need to let those guys know what biscuits and gravy is about.
Yeah, you guys, our Germans would love it. It's very similar to a lot of your.
We are gravy people ourselves.
Yeah,
it's not that kind of gravy.
I tend to make white gravy more often than brown gravy, but I'll go either way.
Yeah. Okay. Or country fried steak, same thing.
Oh yeah.
So,
or chicken fried anything. Chicken fried steak, chicken fried chicken. I tried to explain to my last guy.
Yeah, okay, here's the problem. Indy, you're going through this whole list. I get to go outside because I live in Charleston. I can go like 2 miles and get all this stuff from like a hole in the wall. You can't get it anywhere. You're going to work yourself into a corner.
Well, try explaining to a girlfriend why it's chicken fried chicken. She goes, so it's just chicken. I'm like, no, it's chicken fried. So it's fried chicken. It's not fried chicken, fried chicken. It's chicken fried chicken. It's like chicken fried steak, but with chicken.
I'm glad the live show can get to the bottom of what you and I really talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any organized questions?
There's one question which was basically how, like, were any of the weapons you showed us like famous in the sense of that, jealousy would arise from other soldiers would try to get them from the other side, or like what was are these forgotten weapons now, or are they somehow famous?
Actually, the Austrian guns, and I mean, most of these are Austrian designs. There's some Hungarian, obviously, in here. But these Austrian designs, I don't think they really brought about any jealousy or anything. You have this system where the government it's this factor of the dual monarchy. So everybody's different, and they're unified by the weapons. So there's nothing to be jealous of because you have the same gear, unless you're comparing an Austrian unit to a Hungarian unit, and then there's some there's some issues there. But in terms of the firearms, they're almost like the unifying force. It's sort of the opposite. Now, when they butt up against other armies, is there some jealousy? Maybe a little with the Italians, because the Carcano, as we're going to see, isn't the most polished gun, but I kind of doubt the Italians cared all that much either. You don't see people scrambling to steal Austrian equipment because it's just so different from everything else that they're carrying. That doesn't mean they don't get issued widely, and it doesn't mean that they don't get recycled by the Russians on one side and by the Italians on the other. They certainly do. As a matter of fact, we're going to see a lot of these guns that are in their original 8x50 in the U.S. collector's market are in that caliber because they were not in Austria at the time of the reconversion. They were in Italian inventory. They were given to them as reparations. The Italians would actually send these to Africa to arm Ascari and things like that because they could give them limited amounts of ammo on a separate supply chain. That way, if there was ever a revolt, they couldn't get very far. They'd have the 10 rounds they were given and nothing else. Wow. And if they raided the Italian supplies, they would get 6.5, which was useless in these things. So, a lot of Austrian guns would turn up in Africa in World War II as part of the AOI.
That's very interesting. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Since we just talked about the calibers, that was also a big talk in the chat. How much problems did this cause? Of any anecdotes or any, are there any things noted about how this made problems for logistics or anything?
Thankfully for the Austro-Hungarians, they standardized the rifle cartridge early on. And they standardized, remember, to work with this old boy. So rifle-wise, other than trying to keep a few old black powders still in use, which was very, very rare in rear line, and probably didn't get shot and have to be rearmed, they can issue the same cartridge, that 93 cartridge, to everybody. So rifle-wise, they're fine. Pistol-wise, it's a bit more of a pain in the butt, but those are done on sort of an as-needed basis for officers. Occasionally, you're seeing the Steyr Hahn getting itself to the front line and issued. There's actually a small number, less than 250 of these were converted into like fully automatic pistol carbines with shoulder stocks. It didn't really go very far, but if you're trying to issue a frontline pistol that is going to be used actively, you just sort of shifted to either the Steyr Hahn ammo or maybe the Roth Steyr ammo, but chances are it's probably just the Steyr Hahn ammo. So 9mm Steyr is sort of the prevalent large number pistol cartridge that you're going to see moved around. Other than the rest of this stuff, it's up to the officer to scrounge for their own ammo. It's up to them to order it and wait on it and be aware of it. They're not supposed to be out there fighting with their pistol day in, day out anyway. When you talk about millions of rounds fired, you're talking about rifle ammo, not pistol ammo.
Okay.
So now we have the situation where the chat is full of gravy and Verdun talk, and I can't scroll up far enough to actually look at the questions.
Well, what questions do they have about gravy?
I don't know.
Like cottage fries with gravy? That'd be good. That's
okay. So now I want to point out that all the Germans are stuck with 2 Americans talking about gravy.
Yeah.
Which we can do for hours.
Yeah, easy.
Somebody asked if there's if we can open a Steam group, and there actually is a Great War Steam group, which is called the Indy and Flo Disciples.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? No.
Great. He doesn't even know his own Steam group.
I did not even know that.
I'm an admin on that group.
Yeah.
Yeah, Othais is an admin, so if he's playing later, you can just check if you can find him and play with him.
There's a link on C&Rsenal for the Mumble channel. I maintain a Mumble channel for everybody to pile into and talk if they want, so that we're not blowing up the servers and ruining the game for everybody else.
Okay.
So I can get that link to you guys too.
All right, you guys. Here's a promise. Since I'm going to be writing the Verdun stuff in the next couple of weeks, the beginnings of it anyway. Before Christmas, I'll start playing Verdun. I'll probably get rid of.
You're going to need a private. You're going to need some private tutoring.
Oddly enough, I used to do voiceovers for a bunch of games. I did a lot of stuff for what they do before Battlefield.
Please tell me that the Verdun players in the chat are just laughing about how he's going to stick his head up and get blasted over and over again.
Of course,
something like that. Yeah.
But I might have to do that just for the fans. You're
going to have to crawl everywhere in that game if you want to.
That's just like real life, though. So that's
it's brutal.
Okay, well, I look forward to it. No, but I've done voiceovers for most of my adult life. What I did for a living was voiceovers for commercials, cartoons, and video games. So I've done voiceovers for a lot of games. Nothing for Verdun, of course. The last thing I did, they did a reboot of the old '80s big arcade game Gauntlet. The new version that just came out this year, I was Elf of the 4 characters. He was a Scotsman, you know. Yep,
I'm still waiting to see how this translates into being able to not get shot in Verdun.
It probably, doing the voices for the characters and knowing what they're going to say when they get shot doesn't help not getting shot.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
You're going to be very, out acting in the on the voice chat. It's probably going to be very entertaining.
All right, well, you guys, all you Verdunners out there, within the next few weeks,
we're turning over our audio files for the shooting portions to the Verdun devs, like the raw stuff. So I don't know if they can use. They're working to see if they can use it or not because of the way it echoes. But it might be that Verdun's going to get real sound at some point here.
We actually have some questions about Austro-Hungarian weapons now.
Oh, cool.
There's one question about what was the post-World War I life of these weapons. Like, I mean, when Austria-Hungary split up in a lot of different states and everything, what was the afterlife of these weapons?
Yeah, the Austro-Hungarian Empire weapons become a problem in Europe almost after the war. They get shunted around because a lot of people were paid them as reparation. It's weird. You have this period after the war where people have been paid reparations for different types of guns that they don't really need. So you see people selling like Mosin guns to Finland, and then like other countries that have Austrian straight pulls that don't need them are shunting them over to Italy or something like that. Like they just get moved around in various directions. As a matter of fact, we can do a couple real quick. The Steyr Hahn would be absorbed into Germany, and many would be rechambered into 9mm Parabellum, which it can handle quite well. The Steyr Piper, like I said, in 34 would be upgraded with a better slide and an extractor, and it would serve with the police all the way through World War II. So plenty of these were brought back by Allied forces in World War II, although in the 34 configuration. The rifle, most of the rifles would be shortened. So a lot of these guys, by the way, I have one of these in 8x56. So some of the long rifles stayed long rifles in the new chambering, but a lot of them, especially through Bulgaria had a ton of these things, would be shortened into this pattern. Wow. There's actually Austria, Hungary, and Bulgaria all shorten them. I do have a small article that can kind of help you. Again, that identifying article will help you identify who shortened them, which gives you an idea of when they were shortened. But a lot of the rifles were chopped down to this configuration and rechambered for 8x56, and that's when a lot of them became very sticky. Serbia inherited a bunch and would become Yugoslavia, obviously. I believe I have that here if you give me one moment. So you helping me eyeball this?
I love when he's just picking some huge gun up from under the table.
There's the converted. It's got to be near me, right? No, other side. Yes. Serbia would inherit a bunch of the long rifles and convert them to a short rifle pattern based on the Mauser. So this is a Serbian 95-24. It has done away with the end block system and now works on a stripper clip. It has a permanent end block mounted in there. It's rechambered for 8mm Mauser. So this became a secondary weapon for Yugoslavia. It's both this and the M95M. They're identical. They just have different designations. But yeah, it became a standard short rifle in 8mm. You can tell it has a Mauser-style rear sight, Mauser-style handguard. I'm going to do an episode on these in the near future. I actually have an article about these on my website as well. Let's see. What else got converted and moved around? The 88s, 90s, mostly were abandoned or given over to like Greece and things like that. You'll see it turn up in Balkan regions. An interesting thing is that a batch of these got converted to 8mm Mauser in Belgium, and then it looks like they were being sold to Greece, but nobody's really quite sure of their history or what was going on with them. Those are unsafe to fire. This thing cannot handle 8mm Mauser, so the Belgian firm that did that were kind of not the most responsible people when they did it, but they were done in a large batch, so it looks like it was a military order, not a commercial one. And they did, I believe, turn up in Greek inventory, if I remember correctly. I'd have to do some more research on that. So even these things started wandering around in the Balkans. A lot of this Austro-Hungarian equipment is going to turn up when you have all that fighting in the Balkans through the interwar period and after. Especially when the Germans faced resistance. There's huge resistance in those countries, and tons of this, and then also Italian equipment would turn up.
All right, cool. There is another question. I mean, there's some questions. I think they're all a bit mixed together. So basically, do you know how the different armies handled seizing guns from the enemy? I mean, we have this in our episode that, you know, the Germans capture this and this artillery pieces from the Russians and everything. Do you know what happens with, like, what happens when you stumble across a patch of like Mannlicher rifles? Are they incorporated in the other armies? Like, did the Serbians use any Austrian weapons that were left behind or something?
Whenever rifles were captured, let's say they're captured individually at the front, an individual soldier might make use of it. That's something we can't really track, you know what I mean? But if large batches are taken, they would be sent in for reprocessing and rearseling. There's a lot of examples of these where it gets even more extreme. Like, there are Russian Mosin-Nagants that were refurbished by the Germans that have clear markings, but they even went so far as to attach modifications so that they could take German bayonets, because they'd capture the rifle but not the bayonet.
No.
So you have lots of incidences of this. Rechambering doesn't really become a thing until post-war on some of these guns, because rechambering takes too much time. Usually what happened is they would be seized, they would be packed up with ammo as much as possible. Sometimes they would even produce ammo if they had to, and then they would send those guns to the rear. That's the number one thing, though, is because putting it back up to the front ruins your supply chain. So they would go send it to the rear. Let's say you're Austro-Hungarian and you capture a Russian rifle. You're going to take those, put them to some rear guard, free up either Mannlicher 95s or Mannlicher 8890s, which use your standard cartridge. So before, some guy that was on guard duty had a usable frontline rifle. Now he has a Russian rifle. You send that usable frontline rifle to the front line. So all it was trying to keep that inventory moving straight to the front and nowhere else. On rare occasions, you would have to arm small groups with these sort of weapons, but it wasn't used very often because it became such a nightmare to keep those troops moving. Essentially, once you issue a non-standard rifle and non-standard ammo, you get however many volleys until that ammo that's currently with that unit is depleted, and then you can't really reinforce that unit for ammo. You can't reload them easily. It becomes a nightmare for planning.
No.
That's very interesting, actually. A lot of people have asked that. They've been asking it the whole war so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you'll see, and you see it in World War II too, but you see a lot of times, a good example is anytime you see guards photographed at prison camps or anything like that, at even like field camps and stuff like that, where they've got a lot of troops down, fairly often you'll see photos where the capturing, like the guards are carrying weapons that are not necessarily from the country that the guard is from, because a lot of the guards are being given, you know, rear line stolen weapons or recovered weapons. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Another question is about, you know, last time you showed us some bayonets, if I remember correctly. Do you happen to have some Austro-Hungarian bayonets there? Or do you know if there were any?
Yeah, here, can you reach? Standard bayonet for the M95 is going to be this little guy. He's reverse bladed, which means that when he's mounted to the rifle, the blade is up, because they expected a thrusting motion. Here, I can go ahead and clip her on. They expected a rising thrusting motion, so she's bladed up top. But yeah, it's pretty short, actually. This is a fairly modern single-side bladed bayonet. It's really much better than a lot of the stuff we see in World War I in terms of its thinking. It's short, it's usable, it wears on the belt, and it can be a knife when you're not using it as a bayonet. But that's really about it, though. This tends to be what's out there. Obviously, there's some earlier ones for the 8890s and things like that, but I don't have one handy.
Oh, really cool. Interesting. Thanks.
Cool.
And yeah, I think that's I think the most asked question was basically about how the the opposing armies dealt with the enemy's guns.
And gravy.
And gravy, yeah.
And gravy.
And gravy.
So yeah, I guess that were the Austro-Hungarian weapons. Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, I already said goodbye once, so I'll say goodbye again. Othais, thanks. You know how much we appreciate this. And I'll tell you what, to all the great war fans, and I'll even share this with you, Othais, sometime in the next week, I will actually write down and put on the Great War or on our Facebook or Twitter, according to him, one of my favorite biscuits and gravy recipes. Okay. So that'll be for all you guys out there. A little bonus. Right.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Well,
Thanks. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I guess we won't be seeing you until after Christmas and the new year. So I wanted to go ahead and say really Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to you and your gang, because we love working with you. You know.
Thank you. Yeah, with the machine guns and also with us trying to find the stuff we'll need for the next country, it might be until maybe even March, just because we've got to get it all piled in again. But
machine guns obviously have priority.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll get you some select footage for that too. We'll figure it out.
That's gonna be fantastic.
Really cool. We are going to have the edited version of the German pistols soon on our channel. Like Marcus, our editor, is already working on that.
All right.
Let's see when it's going to be up. We actually thought about, since a lot of you were asking about the unedited version of all these live streams, you know, also about the French weapons and about the German weapons. Othais is going to put them up on his channel.
Okay.
And
it's I get a lot of people going, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? I'm going to do everything I can from the war as soon as I get my hands on it. It takes a week or two to produce an episode, even if I'm rushing. So just patience, guys. You want the animations, you want the line drawings, you want all the good contextual history. It takes me a little bit of time. I'm sorry. Yeah, so it will be there. It's just I'm not like most YouTube channels. I'm not putting something out every single week, twice a week. So
and you should see all the episodes that there are so far, because actually there are quite some episodes already.
Very well done. Yeah.
The time you wait is absolutely worth it.
All right. Well, I guess I probably should give you guys a good sign off.
Oh yeah, I still got like 20 minutes before the restaurants close. All right.
Thank you guys for having me again. Always glad to be here. Always glad to help out. Anybody that's more curious about these guns, please check out our channel at C&Rsenal. We have our primer series going on for World War I. But yeah, just glad to be here, guys, and glad to help out and really expose this history.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, Othais. Thanks, Flo. We'll see you guys in our regular episodes.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.